So as you saw on the stories, I was gonna work on a meringue recipe. Um, and what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna show you the basics of how I'm gonna get everything started to set up. Okay. So I have this mat that is mainly for.
Mom, why you want to play with me? Why you want to play with me, Dad?
Because we're gonna make meringues.
Meringue? I like meringue.
Yes, you like everything sweet. Where did Papi have that? Alrighty, so what we're gonna do is that you can draw the little circles on a parchment paper. And what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna pre-cut parchment paper. Now, I would say I'm gonna cut around 30, there's 35 here, and that would give me, how many do I need? 1, 2, like around 6 trays of these I need to make.
Mom, I cannot see you.
There we go.
I see you, Mom. I cannot see you, Mom.
Hi.
Here.
Alrighty, so we're gonna do pre-cut these. No, don't touch, please.
Okay.
And then I'm also making 100 alfajores and macaroons. So so we're gonna do this. You can draw this in your house if you have a cutter or something, and then that way you know exactly how many you're piping, right? Then Mateo wants to show us, but we have our H egg whites. So I did this 2 days ago. I just took them off the fridge. So right now I'm gonna leave them like around 30 minutes to an hour to be room temperature before I do I start the mixing process. Okay. My oven has been on. I had it on 350 because I was gonna do the alfajores first, but for some reason the easiest part of this order, it's the one I'm not getting. My alfajores are not coming out. So I messed up 2 batches already. So I'm gonna leave the alfajores for the end because it is very time consuming to cut every single piece. And I'm gonna start with the oven. I don't know if you can see, but it is on 180, and I'm gonna wait for it to be 180 while I'm prepping for absolutely everything to make sure that it's on the right temperature. I also mentioned I wash everything and I put it on the dishwasher, but let's say it's not like fully clean from the dishwasher. So what I'm gonna do is that with a paper towel, I'm gonna put vinegar. You can put lime or lemon, and basically I'm gonna wipe everything out. Yes, baby, right here. I'm gonna wipe everything out, make sure there's no residues. We're gonna wait for we need to wait for the eggs. Okay, everything is wiped out. Our bowl is nice and clean. For me, the outside is also important. So now, be careful, you can cut yourself with this. You need to be careful. So everything is nice and clean, and then I'm doing the whisk, I'm doing the bowl, and then we're also gonna do the kitchen mixer, right? Because there can be fats in here that we don't see. So now I'm gonna go ahead, and since I have everything ready, my recipe for every egg, I do 50 grams of sugar. So for every egg, I do 50 grams of sugar. I do a pinch of creme of tartar. That this is used for merengues. If I'm not wrong, this has to do something with barrels and wine, and I think this is like the leftover powder, but I need to do some research, but that's something I remember someone telling me. And this gives it gives like a peak, soft peaks to the meringue. So anything that you wanted to do with egg whites and you want more like stability or to be more stable instead of that soft texture of, like, let's say my Swiss meringue buttercream. This is definitely something that I use. So I will use 1/4 of these with the egg whites. And anything that you want to add, you need to add it before, because if you add it after, then it's gonna take out the air. So I'll show you that later. So now I'm gonna measure my sugar. I'm gonna do my baking sheets. I'm gonna prep everything, and then I'll come back to show you how we make the meringues. One step I forgot to mention, your piping tip. These should also be clean with vinegar, okay? Because we don't want any fats to be touching the meringue, and that way it's gonna pipe down beautifully. Other than that, piping, it's a different method. It's a whole different topic. I admire people that do custom cookies with royal icing because you have to have a really good pulse. But I'm gonna start getting ready, and then I'll come back to you with how we put everything together, Mateo and I. As I'm getting ready to put my meringues together, there is a couple of things. Anytime you bake, have your your recipe book ready. I have 2 different recipes. And what I like to do is that sometimes I remember, sometimes not, but there is different things that I like about different recipes, like anyone. So I pick and choose whatever is best. When I search for my recipes, I want to make sure that it's not too sweet. Like my vanilla cake took me 5 or 6 tries to get it in a good place. A lot of people make vanilla cake extremely sweet, like they put so much sugar into it. The same thing with my buttercreams. So find the recipe that fits best to you. I'm gonna show you more or less what I do, and then we're gonna go from there. Okay, let's start with step 1. I'm gonna put my egg whites into the bowl. I want to scoop everything and make sure that everything's coming out. So once you have the egg whites in there, you sort of want to make sure that you add all of the ingredients and then the sugar. So we're going to add all the ingredients that we need, and then we're going to go ahead and measure and add the sugar, okay? So now I need half a teaspoon of cream tartar. I need some sea salt. This is 1/4, but I need 1/8. So basically, I'm just gonna do half of it. I don't know if you can see that. Ready? And now we need a teaspoon of vanilla. Adding my cream of tartar, my salt, my egg whites, and I'm going to start beating slowly. And then we're going to increasingly go and see, we're going to increasingly start mixing a little higher on the speed. So as we do this, I will measure. I will measure the sugar, and when it comes to grams, I'm super meticulous, so I like to use these very small scales. And from here this is where we're starting, and we're gonna go from low to medium, right? So we're gonna go from somewhere in third to probably a 6. as it's going, this should go about 6 to 10 minutes. You just want to make sure that it's like it has peaked off and it also has this nice flow. Here we are. It has been around, I would say, 2 to 3 minutes. You can see that it's nicely foaming off and peeking up. So we're just gonna wait a little longer to start adding our sugar. This is where I will stop. It's nice and foamy. It's even a little stiff without the sugar. So we're gonna start adding sugar now, 1 tablespoon at a time. And it's better if you sift. So if you sift it through the process, because at least you're not gonna have any chunks of sugar, and it's gonna be a lot easier to dissolve as this is mixing up. We're finally finishing up with the sugar. Any big chunks, if you don't have caster sugar that might be too clumpy, then just leave them aside. Let this be for at least 1 or 2 more minutes. We do want to make sure that you don't see any sugar in the egg whites, and we want to make sure that everything is nicely dissolved. So now, once it's done, I will do a finishing step that helps my meringues not to be too sticky, and then I will also show you the baking process. I believe for me this is it. I don't feel any sugar in there. I think it has a nice peak. Basically, how they say to test that your meringue is ready is to pour the mixing bowl, and if nothing falls, it's because it's ready, and you can see like it's nicely peaking. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do now. Your hands or anything. Your hands are warm. They might might have touched butter or anything. Even the meringue itself, you don't want it to be sticky. What I'm gonna go ahead and do now is that I'm gonna grab a tablespoon, and I'm gonna throw in here some cornstarch. I'm gonna put a teaspoon of vinegar. Like I mentioned, I'm not very good at making these videos, but let me not pour it right in there, because if too much comes out, there's no going back. Perfect. So there we go. And now I also want to put a teaspoon of vanilla. And I didn't find this in a lot of recipes, but with the vinegar and the cornstarch help do is that it helps stabilize the meringue and it's also not too sticky. Now when you're mixing, you want to make sure you go around the edges into the center and you fold the meringue super nicely. Already, we don't want to take out the air from the meringue. So if you go at it and you're super hard with it, then it might even become a marshmallow, depending on how you're doing this. Okay, perfect. It should be nicely mixed. Beautiful. Alrighty, now it's the next step in where I use the piping bag. This is the tricky part. I have to do 100 meringues. Each batch is gonna take 2 hours and a half. I have to go ahead, put the first batch on the oven on 180 for an hour and a half. Then after that, I have to turn off the oven and leave it resting for another hour. And after that, I have to start all over again. So these are a couple of tricks. I'm gonna put this on my piping bag, then I'm gonna cover these with a cling film, and then I'm gonna just leave it resting, and then I'm gonna come back to it once those 2 hours and a half has passed. So approximately these merengues, 100 merengues, are gonna take me 10 hours to make. So some things are very easy, very affordable, but they're so time consuming. And while I'm working on these, I'm gonna see if I can work on my alfajores and the filling for my mini macarons. So I have chosen this piping tip. I have filled out my bag. The next process for me is that my hands tend to be warm. Women's hands tend to be warm, so I'm gonna use gloves. If you think that it's cleaner to work with food with gloves, not necessarily. Like if you are tending a bakery counter and you're gonna touch food that you're gonna put into a box, maybe. But when you're cooking, try to cook with gloves. I mean, you don't notice if your hands are getting dirty. You should be washing them like 100 times a day, especially if you make cakes from home. I'm constantly washing dishes, washing my hands. And if I didn't notice that I touched something and I went to touch something else, that could be food contamination. So use gloves when it's necessary. I use them because it allows me to have some grip, and because also we don't want to touch with the heat of our hands here. We also want to touch on the top because this is just foam. Like this is so light. You know, there's no weight to it. It's just egg whites and sugar. Okay, I'm gonna start piping now.
Wait, but Victoria. Went nuts. Yeah, they told her like an hour ago she flipped out.